I didn't have a lot of challenges because I was smart enough to follow Barry Sonnenfeld's direction.
Picture this, a grand theater, lights dimmed, hushed anticipation settling over the crowd. On stage, a lone figure emerges, stoic, composed, the very embodiment of strength. Decades ago, that commanding presence belonged to a younger man named Tommy Lee Jones. His gravelly voice boomed through cinema speakers, ushering us into worlds of righteous lawmen, ruthless outlaws, and haunted souls. He was the archetype of the strong, silent type, a cowboy in a tailored suit, a marshal with ice in his veins, a gunslinger who never blinked. Back then, his world was one of accolades and applause. He moved through Hollywood like he owned the place, his performances leaving critics in awe and audiences on the edge of their seats. Fast forward to today. Almost 80 years have etched lines into that once unflappable face, and yet it's not just years we see. It's a subtle tremor in his step, a flicker of uncertainty behind those steely eyes. At a recent premiere, whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. He couldn't recall his co-star's name. The same man who once faced down villains without flinching now hesitated when asked about past glories. The question on everyone's mind, how did the legend we knew so well find himself here, on the cusp of 80, shadowed by confusion and retreat? To understand, we have to step into his past. Born in 1946 in a tiny Texas town of barely 3,000 souls, Tommy's early life was a study in contrasts. His father, Clyde, was a drifter in oil fields, a cowboy with the sun baked into his leathery skin and hard hands made for rugged work. His mother, Lucille, was a marvel of multitasking, police officer, schoolteacher, beautician, wearing each hat with equal resolve. Yet the stability their jobs might imply never seeped into their marriage. They married and divorced twice, dragging their son through a cycle of makeshift homes and whispered gossip in trailer parks. No sooner had one argument ended than another began, and Tommy learned young that a safe harbor was nothing more than an illusion. There were beatings, too, violent outbursts from a father whose temper flared after 12-hour shifts in oppressive heat. The smallest infraction, mud tracked into the trailer, could trigger a storm of fists. When oil prices collapsed, Clyde's frustration became a thunderstorm of rage, and Tommy often bore the brunt of it. Neighbors heard the crashes of tables and muffled screams, family secrets tucked behind thin trailer walls. It was a world where fear was currency and silence a shield. And from those ashes of trauma rose something remarkable, the blank, unreadable mask that would define his screen persona for generations to come. Yet there was also a defining moment of near catastrophe, a 1954 gas explosion at an oil rig that lit the sky with a fireball 200 feet high, claiming lives and leaving Clyde with third-degree burns. Tommy, at 8 years old, watched his father scream in his sleep as nightmares of fire burned into both their memories. He responded not with tears but with resolve, a steely determination that pain would not break him. Instead, it forged him, tempered him into a man who could wade into danger and stand fast. The smells of diesel, the shouts of fellow rig workers, the sight of blood and broken machinery, all of it became part of his unspoken vocabulary as he learned early on that to survive was to steel yourself against fear. From those humble, tumultuous beginnings, he earned a scholarship to St. Mark's School in Dallas by age 13, a lifeline toward a brighter horizon. And yet, even with that opportunity, summers found him back on the oil rigs, pulling 14-hour shifts under a merciless sun, muscles straining, sweat stinging his eyes. He lost weight, calluses blossomed across his palms, and he tasted the raw edge of mortality when a 500-pound drill bit tore free and smashed the platform beside him. Barely alive but unbowed, he carried lessons of perseverance back to the halls of Harvard, where his roommate was none other than a rising politician named Al Gore. It was at Harvard that his world expanded. Late-night debates on politics and literature sharpened his mind. Theater rehearsals revealed a talent for inhabiting other lives. When that legendary Harvard-Yale game ended in a miraculous 29-29 tie, he was right there on the field, proving he could channel both cerebral acumen and raw physicality. Friends remember him not as a Hollywood starlet, but as a determined scholar whose slim frame hid a reservoir of willpower. He graduated in '69 with a degree in English literature, ready to conquer New York's theater scene. And conquer it he did, from off-Broadway thrillers to soap opera stints that paid the rent but didn't dull his ambition. By the time Love Story wound its credits, his foot was wedged in the door of Hollywood. He pursued roles with the intensity of a man who knew what it meant to fight for every inch. Rolling Thunder, The Executioner's Song, The Fugitive, each performance another layer in a legacy of unforgettable characters. Alongside these triumphs were personal battles, 2 failed marriages, rumors of on-set altercations, moments of heavy drinking that almost derailed both his career and his health. And yet, every time he stumbled, he rose with that same quiet resilience that defined the boy who survived an oil rig blast. Now, in the twilight of his career, that resilience shows cracks. No new films since 2019's Ad Astra, a viral clip at a premiere that sparked concerns of memory loss, a choice to disappear to a sprawling Texas ranch rather than face the spotlight. The strong silent type has fallen silent, retreating from a world that once clamored for his presence. Friends close to him describe a man grappling with mortality, haunted by pieces of his past he can no longer control, yearning for a simpler life defined by horses and wide-open fields rather than red carpets and flashing cameras. The same resolve that carried him through childhood traumas now battles the creeping shadows of age and uncertainty. And so here we stand, at a crossroads between nostalgia and reality, empathy and voyeurism. How did the icon we cheered become the subject of our concern? In the sections ahead, we'll peel back layers of celebrity myth and human frailty, tracing the journey from trailer park boy to Hollywood legend, and finally to a retreating figure in the dusk of his years. We'll explore the moments that built him and the moments that unravel him, asking the difficult question, when a legend ages, who are we permitted to mourn, the character or the man behind the mask? By the mid-1970s, Tommy Lee Jones had carved his name into the foundations of New York theater. Off-Broadway audiences were spellbound by his raw intensity, and casting directors scrambled to bring that energy to film. His first taste of the silver screen arrived in 1970's Love Story, a small but crucial part that positioned him as one of Hollywood's most promising newcomers. Yet he never lost that edge. He continued to oscillate between stage and screen, each performance reinforcing his reputation as a chameleon, one moment a wounded Vietnam vet in Rolling Thunder, the next a cunning detective in Eyes of Laura Mars. Audiences admired the quiet gravity he brought to every character, and colleagues whispered about his methodical approach behind closed doors. Meanwhile, life off the set was anything but quiet. He married his first wife, Kate Lardner, on New Year's Eve 1971, a union built on mutual respect for literature and ambition. But the demands of long hours, constant travel, and emotional roles began to widen the gap between them. By 1978, whispers of estrangement and obsession with work overshadowed any romantic idealism. The divorce was finalized after 6 years, leaving him heartbroken but more determined than ever. His second marriage, to photographer Kimberly Coughley in 1981, lasted nearly 15 years and produced 2 children. She became his anchor, soothing the turbulence of long shoots and the weight of dramatic roles. Yet even that bond strained under the glare of publicity and rumors of on-set affairs. Professionally, the 1980s became his proving ground. Performances in The Executioner's Song and Rolling Thunder earned him critical acclaim and multiple award nominations. In 1983, his chilling portrayal of real-life murderer Gary Gilmore won him an Emmy and cemented his status as one of the industry's most fearless actors. Directors sought him out for his unyielding commitment, knowing he'd bring the same discipline honed on oil rigs and Ivy League debate floors. When he later stepped into the sheriff's boots in No Country for Old Men, those same qualities would define his gravest role. Only in the 1980s, he was still forging that legacy. On set, stories began to emerge of a man who blurred performance and reality. Co-stars recalled improvised rants that left crews on edge, or sudden demands for additional takes to capture perfect intensity. Rumors circulated of an altercation during Under Siege, starring Steven Seagal. Some claimed Jones had struck a stuntman who challenged his dedication. No lawsuit materialized, but the tale added to an aura of unpredictability that both fascinated and intimidated. Then came The Fugitive exploded in 1993, his performance as Deputy U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard earning him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. The film's blockbuster success, nearly $400 million worldwide, seemed to validate every sacrifice he had made. Behind the scenes, though, he battled chronic back pain, the legacy of decades of physical roles. Leaked medical notes suggested spinal compression so severe he required intensive physical therapy between takes. Despite any discomfort, he showed no sign of slowing. Men in Black in 1997 turned his steely resolve into comedic gold, alongside a young Will Smith. The chemistry between his Agent K and Smith's Agent J spawned a franchise that grossed nearly $600 million. Yet even amid the laughter, stories circulated of mishaps on set, broken props, crew members injured by accident, and offhand comments left unspoken but widely shared. The public learned about a rumored on-set feud with Jim Carrey during Batman Forever, a tension Carrey later dismissed as a simple misunderstanding, but one more piece of lore that fueled fascination. His personal life trailed the same highs and lows. His second marriage dissolved amid tabloid allegations of infidelity. And in 2001, he wed Dawn Laurel, a behind-the-camera professional nearly 2 decades his junior. Their union, kept largely private, stood in stark contrast to his earlier, more public relationships. Don provided a sanctuary on his sprawling Texas ranch, where he traded scripts for saddle boots, finding respite in the early morning mist and the rhythmic clop of horses. Still, even rural life carried risks. A polo match gone awry led to a multi-million-dollar lawsuit from an injured guest. Although the court ruled in his favor, the headlines were a reminder that even the quietest life could erupt in controversy. Undaunted, he poured his energy into ranch management and property investments, eventually owning one of the nation's largest private polo estates. By his 70th birthday, he had become both a silver screen legend and a shrewd rancher, mastering worlds few could bridge. As the new decade dawned, the stream of film roles began to wane. Ad Astra in 2019 marked his last major screen appearance, a brief but memorable turn as Brad Pitt's missing father. He spoke only a handful of lines, each delivered with trademark gravitas but lacking the kinetic drive that once propelled him through every scene. Industry insiders whispered of health concerns making long shoots untenable, while others speculated he simply craved a quieter life. Then, a single moment at a recent premiere snapped speculation into headlines. Standing beside a young co-star, he asked if they had ever shared a scene, an innocent question that shattered the myth of invincibility. The clip spread like wildfire on social media, heartbreaking and human all at once. A pause pregnant with unspoken fear, a memory slipping through fingers that once held scripts and applause. In that instant, the strong silent type felt fragile, reminding us that legends grow old too. Now, in the isolated early mornings on that sprawling ranch, the man once celebrated as Hollywood's unshakable archetype moves with the quiet gravity of a man at war with time. Each breath he draws into his lungs is weighted by decades of grit and glory, yet tinged with the faint scent of regret. Where a camera once captured his iron resolve, now it lingers on the subtle tremors in his hands and the slight stumble in his gait. At 79, Tommy Lee Jones finds solace in stewardship of land rather than scripts, but solitude invites its own reflections. He wakes before dawn, tracing familiar paths through mesquite groves and cattle pens, each step a testament to a life built on tenacity. Yet even the earth's rhythms cannot still the echo of fading memories. Neighbors and ranch hands speak in hushed tones of afternoons when a distant visitor glimpsed him standing by a fence, eyes fixed on a horizon no longer familiar. They describe a once unstoppable presence reduced to a silhouette of doubt. His wife Dawn remains his guardian, guiding his path between fields and stables. By her side he is steadied, yet she can only do so much against the inexorable currents of age. Rumors swirl that he battles undiagnosed health issues. Arthritis gnawing at his joints, cardiovascular concerns lurking in hushed medical notes, and whispers of early cognitive decline flitting like shadows across social feeds. Yet official statements remain scarce, each press release carefully phrased to preserve dignity and deny further intrusion. Privacy, after all, was always his prized commodity. Contrast this guarded existence with the flamboyant premieres of earlier decades, tailored tuxedos under flashing cameras, roaring applause, and voices clamoring for another glimpse of the gravel-voiced icon. The world he once commanded now observes him from a distance, whispers of respect mingling with heartbreak. Inside the main ranch house, heirlooms and awards line shelves like sentinels of a storied past. His Oscar statuette stands guard over framed clippings from The Fugitive, No Country for Old Men, and Men in Black. Yet in that hush, trophies feel less like triumphs and more like relics of an era slipping through his grasp. If the ranch represents sanctuary, it is also a mirror of transformation. Cattle once driven to market are now more often led quietly to shaded pavilions when storms threaten their calm. Polo fields, the site of past adrenaline-fueled matches, lie dormant more days than they are in play. It is a world that bends to his rhythms but cannot halt nature's decree. Outside the boundary fences, news cycles continue to spotlight younger faces and fresher stories. Streaming services revamp classics, algorithms tailor content to niche demographics, and every scroll risks pushing his name further down the feed. Yet for loyal admirers, the mere sight of a black hat or a weathered face sparks a cascade of memories. They recall the hush that fell when Agent K silently neutralized an alien threat, or the steel determination in Sheriff Bell's final, world-weary reflection on evil's persistence. In those moments, he was more than a performer, he was a mirror for our own struggles, a voice in storms of doubt. Today that mirror has cracked. We watch not out of disdain but with a solemn compassion, hoping for glimpses of the iron core that once faced down inner demons and corporate blockbusters alike. In the quiet of the ranch, the man who mastered silence now battles the noise within his own mind. There are plans whispered in private conversations, memoirs tentatively sketched in old notebooks, interviews scripted to celebrate milestones and reclaim fading chapters. But each time he lifts a pen, those tremors return, shaking the weight of the story he longs to tell. And so the mask of silence returns. He retreats further behind its iron facade, letting only fleeting photographs and second-hand anecdotes remind the world he was once a titan of the screen. Collapsing into a rocking chair on the veranda, he watches the sun dip low beyond the horizon, the sky painted in streaks of orange and purple. In the shifting light, he is both legend and man, a living bridge between the indomitable youth of a Hollywood golden age and the inevitable twilight every star must face. And as the last embers of the day fade, we are left with the question: can the man who once stood at the pinnacle of fame find peace in the shadows of his own legacy? The answer will shape how we remember him: a titan undone by time, or a survivor who refused to relinquish the quiet core of his soul, even as applause faded into silence. A rare glimpse behind the weathered gates of his ranch reveals more than acres of grazing cattle and silent barns. It uncovers the quiet reckonings of a man confronting a lifetime of choices and compromises. In the golden haze of a late afternoon, Tommy Lee Jones sometimes retreats to an old wooden desk tucked away in a corner study, where sunlight dapples the spines of well-worn scripts and leather-bound journals. Here, he traces the loops of ink left by a younger hand, jotting scene notes between arguments in trailers and midnight rehearsals in Boston auditoriums. Those entries speak of raw ambition, of restless nights pacing theater stages, and of a voice honed for resonant authority. Yet, nestled among passionate declarations, lie sharper reflections, silent question marks about the cost of relentless pursuit and the distance it carved between him and the world beyond the lens. There are moments he reads lines from films he cannot remember filming, pauses on pages filled with references he once lived, and wonders if time has stolen more than just celluloid frames. Fans find fragments of his legacy rewoven into online petitions demanding a final on-camera farewell, desperate for a last glimpse of the hero who stood unflinching against insurmountable odds. His mind drifts to roles he never dared tackle, comic turns that might have broadened his reach, or small indie collaborations that could have nourished his soul rather than his bank account. Regret flickers behind his gaze, a whisper that perhaps artistic risk was sacrificed at the altar of expectation, and that even legends must sometimes choose between the safe harbor of superstardom and the unpredictable currents of reinvention. Amid these internal sparring matches, the specter of fatherhood looms large. His 2 children, now adults forging identities of their own, visit sparingly, each reunion a bittersweet blend of laughter and diffidence. He recalls the day Austin first picked up a banjo on set, the proud applause in the editing room when Victoria watched her father direct a scene and whispered shock at his measured calm. But those moments were fleeting intermissions in the symphony of his career, eclipsed by long stretches of location shoots and red-eye flights. Sometimes he wonders if his legacy will be measured more by celluloid memories than by bedtime stories or backyard baseball games he missed. The silence that follows these thoughts is profound, as if the ranch itself holds its breath out of respect for a bond frayed by fame's demanding pace. In the shifting rhythms of ranch life, he searches for redemption. Early mornings find him riding past dew-drenched fields, the steady clip-clop of hooves a metronome for repairing the fractured self. Here he trades dialogue for solitude, barbed wire fences for Hollywood backlots, hoping the wide-open sky can stretch his spirit as much as his calves. Yet the same instinct that once drove him to harness every ounce of tension for the camera now battles the urge to retreat forever. He confesses in rare moments of candor that the freedom of anonymity can be both balm and cage, that relinquishing the applause can quiet the mind, but also leave a hollow ache where passion once roared. In this paradox lies his final greatest performance, living authentically when the world expects a caricature of invincibility. Meanwhile, the entertainment industry churns forward, churning out younger stars and chasing flashier trends. Streaming platforms resurrect his classics in binge-ready marathons, algorithms nudging viewers toward dusty westerns and adrenaline-fueled thrillers alike. Online communities debate every nuance of characters he crafted decades ago, piecing together continuity mistakes in Men in Black and analyzing Sheriff Bell's monologues as if prophecy. Their fervor offers ephemeral solace, the knowledge that his art still convulses with curiosity and passion, but it also stings, reminding him that those conversations happen in digital realms he seldom visits. He wonders if the next generation will ever know the man behind the muttered lines, or only the echoes of a persona etched in celluloid. So here he stands on the cusp of 80. Neither celebrity nor recluse, but the poignant intersection of both. His pen hovers above blank pages, memoirs unwritten, dialogues unsaid, Friends encourage him to share final stories, tales of long nights learning lines by heart, of accidental bonds backstage, of the shock of wielding an Oscar statuette that felt heavier than any rifle he ever held. But he hesitates, wary of exposing the raw edges beneath the crafted veneer. Perhaps this film of life resists a tidy ending, demanding instead a lingering gaze that honors both the triumphs and the tremors. And as he closes the journals one last time and steps onto the ranch porch, he allows the sky to hold his silhouette, offering a quiet testament that even icons age, even legends soften, and even the strongest masks can slip into the gathering dusk.